The journey is a long one, and in Europe, at least, we are a couple of steps behind the US.
Mm.
What we are learning out of US and out of our experiences in um, Europe are three or four things. Number one, that data as in itself, if it is considered a cost center, that if we are just using data or doing data for the sake of improving data reporting, for example, regulatory reporting, generally you solve only for that narrow cause. You do not solve it for the entire AI or the democratization of the data. The second point is you always need to understand the end-to-end life cycle of data. Generally,
Yeah.
what we are doing not too well in the data community as such across the entire globe is always to look at what are the, let's say, analytical use cases, or we always end up talking about the use case of data. In my opinion, that is a very narrow perspective. We have to look at the end-to-end life cycle of how the data is getting generated, who is producing the data, and how is it getting used? Where are we storing the data, and how are the pipelines built? The third thing, and I can deep dive a little bit also on all these points, the third point is once you have these pipelines ready, once you have the producer to consumer transparency, we need to start understanding that entire technology. There is nothing called a CIO, an enterprise architect, and a chief data officer anymore. Going forward, we should actually kind of marry all these roles together, because it needs to become a data-driven architecture. It needs to become a data-driven application for us to really get to the results that we want. And
So
the last point.
So what you're saying is that all of these roles should be essentially data focused.
Exactly. All of these
Okay.
roles either need to become one role, or I'm sure that's going to give a lot of heart pain. But I think all of these roles at least need to pull at the same string. Today, everybody's pulling in their own direction, right? The CIO pulls for application. The architect pulls in terms of the enterprise architecture, a system-driven architecture. And the data guy is pulling in terms of how is the data flowing. We need to bring all these things together. And the last point is the chief data officer role. Once you start getting all these pieces in place and the organization is maturing, we need to think about what is the chief data officer role evolving to become. And there, I have a very, very strong view that in the next years, the chief data officer role should be becoming the chief product officer role. Because if we want to do AI, if we want to do end-to-end process improvement, that can only be possible if the operations, data, IT, all these roles become together and become the product role. Those will be the four kind of pillars I can talk about, how we are maturing, and then what's the future.